Good morning, everybody. This is Chatting with CHAP, and I am your host, Ginger Wade. And today we have got a really special episode. I have Ireida. Oh my goodness, I always just think of Ireida Camille because that's what you. I can't remember your last name. She is going to talk with us about bilingual homeschooling. I am so excited. Before we get started, we're going to talk about turning on closed captioning in Spanish so that you can follow along. So if you're watching on YouTube, there's an option to choose closed captioning, go in the settings, choose the auto translation, and then choose Spanish in there. And now Ireida is going to explain that in Spanish. So if you're Spanish speaking, you know how to do it. So go ahead, Ireida.
Ok, buenos días. Hola, mi nombre es Ireida y si quieren poder escuchar, no escuchar, pero leer esta conversación en español, lo que tienen que hacer es, tienen que presionar donde dice CC o donde dice para los subtítulos, closed captioning. Al ladito hay una ruedita para los ajustes. Si le da al ajuste, luego puede elegir autotraducción y elegir el lenguaje español. ¿Ok?
Oh, yay! So now everyone can understand each other.
Yes.
This is so good.
Yes, that's what we're hoping to do here.
Okay, so Ireida, let's start at the beginning. Let's let everybody know about you a little bit. Tell us your history, your background, your family, whatever you'd like to share. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. So my name is Ireida, and I am originally born and raised in Puerto Rico. And after that, my family moved to New York. I moved to New York as a seventh grader. I remember that clearly because I was dropped into a Catholic junior high school with no English learning program, like English as a second language program. There was one other Spanish speaker in my entire school, and it was a secretary. I still remember her dearly. And I just remember feeling like I was either going to have to learn this or I was going to fail. I was going to fail at everything. I was very driven by grades. I grew up just going to traditional school, so I was very driven by that. Anyways, I had a sweet teacher that chose to stay with me every day after school for 30 minutes out of the kindness of her heart. Like, no one asked her to do this. No one was paying her to do this. She just did it. And she just asked my mom if that would be okay. And she stayed with me for 30 minutes after school every day, teaching me English. And within 6 months, I was comfortable enough to be able to read aloud in my class in English, which was like a huge thing for me. I did not want to read aloud. I did not want to read from the history book. I did not want to have to speak in front of English, in front of everyone because of my accent. And so when finally that was overcome, that was like such a big deal. I just felt like I was bilingual. I was able to speak both languages, and the level of confidence definitely went up for sure. Fast forward, I ended up going to college at Penn State, and I guess I'm going to be sharing my age here a little bit, but I don't really care. That was one of the very first years that Facebook was a thing. And by God's grace, I'm just so grateful. Like, technology can be a crazy thing, but it can be such a good thing as well. By God's grace, I was connected to this teacher again through Facebook, and I was able to thank her as a young adult for what she did. I was like, if I'm in college now, it's because of you. Like, I'm just so grateful. So she definitely impacted my life forever and ever. But that's probably the first time I realized how important it is to be bilingual. After graduating college, every opportunity that I've had to work, I got because I speak two languages. So that was another thing that I was like, oh my goodness, this is a big deal. And then obviously, even though I was living in the United States, going back to Puerto Rico to visit my family, I also wanted to still be able to communicate with my family, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, friends that I left there. So there was a lot of reasons why I wanted to hold on to both languages, which is why in college I did do a Spanish minor to try to keep my linguistic skills, at the level it needed to be. fast forward, I got married, met my sweet husband while I was a junior in college. He was already done with college. I just walked into his dad's church. That's a whole other story that we won't get into. um, I was a hot mess, college student hot mess, and the Lord came and he rescued me. And I'm so grateful for that. And so my life changed completely. And the church was going to El Salvador for a missions trip. And we ended up going, and while I was there, I was one of the few, if not the only Spanish speaker, at least bilingual, fully bilingual. And so I was used to, for lots of different purposes. People needed to communicate for logistical purposes. And at one point, I was also interpreting a sermon, which I don't even know how that actually worked out, or how it actually went, but I'm hoping that the Lord just used the words that did come out. But it was yet another reminder of, wow, I really need, this is a gift. It's a gift that I can speak two languages. And so I need to nourish that and nurture that and flourish in that, because not everyone gets to do this. So Rob and I got married, and then we were missionary associates to India for 2 years. And so that's when I was on the other side of the I guess, spectrum, where I felt like I couldn't say a word. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't ask for things. I couldn't say a simple yes or no. My very first time in northern India, I was so sick. We had to go to a hospital, and I couldn't even say yes or no in Hindi at that point. It was so terrifying. So then through that experience, I learned the value of a qualified interpreter, which, side note, I work with a language services agency now, and I totally understand now the ins and outs of interpretation and translation, and doing that in the community and serving others and having a career in that as well. So that's when I was exposed to all of that. After we came back from India with our firstborn, because he was born in the United States, but his crib, I say, was India, because he spent his first year of life in India. And his first word was in Hindi, which is it was a cha, which is good, means good. But when we came back, and as Christian was getting older, and then we were pregnant with our second, we realized that I didn't want to be working full time. And so I wanted to be with my kids. I wasn't ready to take my son to school and leave him there all day. I just wasn't ready. Again, by God's grace, he put me in the right community, the right people that introduced me to this world of homeschooling. I remember walking to the first CHAP convention, having zero clue. My friend and I, when we walked in there, we must have looked clueless, because we had this dear man come right up to us and greet us and say, "Is this your first time?" It's like, yes, can you tell? Everyone was so ready with suitcases and stuff and bags, and we showed up with a cup of coffee, a little purse, and hats. We're here.
Was he in a suit? Was he in a suit? I know who that is. Yes, okay. He was very faithful at the door for many years.
Okay, well, he was wonderful. And ever since walking through CHAP, our first CHAP convention, our lives changed. This whole homeschooling world was open to us, and we haven't looked back since. At the beginning, my husband and I would say, well, we'll pray about it each year, and see what happens. And now I'm like, okay, so for high school, we're probably going to do, X, Y, or Z, or we're in it. We're in it. We love it. We're going to stay in it. So that's a little bit of background. And we've been, I know we're going to talk about this more too, but we have been homeschooling our kids bilingually because of my background, because of my experiences. And my husband is 100% on board and supportive of that, even though he's from here and only speaks English. He has been faithfully doing his Duolingo for Spanish. So that's great. And he tries his best. He tries his best to communicate with my family and all of that. So it's It's a family affair for sure.
That is wonderful. I just can't imagine. I love language, but I don't pick it up well. I did take 4 years of Spanish, and when I was in the middle of it, it was great. Like I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I could speak with my cousin who was also taking Spanish, but I worked at a bank in the Hispanic area of Lebanon City. And I
Okay.
worked with a woman named Yolanda who was wonderful, of course, native Spanish speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I would listen to her talk to the people at the drive-in, and I would be like, oh my word, I have like people talk about English speakers talking fast. I mean, it's amazing how fast you're like, I have no idea. I've studied this language for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
No idea what they're saying. So, but I love it. I do love languages. I think that's wonderful. I can't even imagine seventh grade and you're plunked in the middle of like there's no Spanish except for that one person and that dear wonderful woman, which praise Jesus for him, for that teacher. Praise Jesus for her that because that and that's a reminder to everyone, like you don't know the impact you're gonna have when you take the time
That's right.
with someone, right? You just and that's out even outside of this bilingual homeschooling thing, like
Mm-hmm.
anything that you're doing, you have no idea what the time that you put into support into someone is going to end up doing. That is an amazing story. And yes, the Facebook story is wonderful too, that you could go back and say, look at me, look what I could
Yeah.
do. I love it.
Yes,
I
and now
love it.
she follows and she sees pictures of my kids, and she knows that I'm teaching them in both languages and all of that. It's such a gift. I can't wait when we get to heaven. I can't wait to see the fruit of all the yeses that we've said, right? The things that we've said yes to. I'm going to commit to doing this, the impact, the little things that maybe in your everyday you're not even thinking that it's just doing anything. Is this worth anything?
Yeah.
Is this changing anything? One day we'll see, right? And I'm just
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah. How amazing. And that was a question I was going to have. Is your husband bilingual too? Does he know? But he is so supportive. And I love talking to both of you guys. You have such a passion for what you're doing.
Thanks.
And like you said, the importance of um, interpreting things so that others can understand, right? And just the encouragement and just lifting up that people get just from, understanding is so,
Yes.
so important. So let's jump into, and Duolingo. So do you think Duolingo is, a good tool? Like some of my kids have used Duolingo too, like, for different languages and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But I've heard different things. Like I've heard, well, it's good, but no, it's not really good or whatever. I mean, there's tons of things like that. There's drops and there's my one daughter uses drops and there's other is it Babel? I don't know. There's lots of different language things out there.
Yes,
But
there's lots of them. I don't think it's the only tool you should be using. I don't
mhm,
think it's the only tool that will get you to a level of fluency that will make you feel comfortable enough to actually like jump out and use the language
mhm,
that you have. But if it's something that it's keeping you practicing and it's forcing you to think in that other language and you're still learning grammar and you're still learning vocabulary in ways that, it's sometimes mindless, and you're still exposing yourself to it and it's still helpful, then I'd say, yes, do it.
yeah,
And I only say that just because, for example, with my husband, obviously learning a second language as an adult is much different than learning a second language as a child, which is something else we can talk about. But for my husband, he's exposed to our culture, my culture, every time that we visit my mom and my grandmother's there, my cousins are there, my sister's there, right? And we're speaking Spanish, but we are speaking 1,000 miles an hour because it's what you do. Because why not, right? But he's been able to take some of that and then slow down with the Duolingo, right? So it's being slowed down, and then he's able to ask me specific questions like, hey, when you were talking to your mom, you said it this way, but in Duolingo, they're teaching me this way. What's the difference here? So he's making those connections himself in that way. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm not the best teacher because we've been together it's going to be 16 years this May and he's still not bilingual. So I don't know. Maybe you should have.
there's a lot going on. I mean, kids take
There's
a
a lot
long time.
going
He's got a lot going on, so it's okay. I don't know. I just remember ¿Dónde está el baño? That's the most
Yes,
important sentence anywhere you go.
yes. So important. So important.
Oh my goodness. So, okay. So there was another question I was going to ask you, but it's going to get us off the track of why we're here. So let's get, and maybe we'll come back around to it.
Sure.
But let's talk a little bit about bilingual homeschooling. Like,
Mhm.
just what is this bilingual homeschooling thing? Like, why do people want to do it? What's the interest? Like, you know, you're involved. I mean, you're doing bilingual homeschooling. So what does it look like for you? Or what
Sure.
different ways or reasons have you seen people wanting to do bilingual homeschooling?
Yes, absolutely. So I didn't say, I guess, in my introduction, but we've been homeschooling. I like to say over 10 years. I think homeschooling is really just living together,
Yes.
learning together. So if we're going to go by that definition, I guess my oldest is now 13. So 13 years. So I officially have a teenager, which is crazy. I can no longer say my littles because now I have a teenager. But when I started homeschooling, like many other rookie homeschool moms, I was thinking about doing school at home. And I had also taught Spanish in a classroom setting from pre-K to 12th grade for several years. I did it in a couple different private schools in Pennsylvania and also in Delaware. And so I came with that mindset of we're doing school at home. And so I had all these different subjects and all these different things. And I quickly became overwhelmed because I also wanted to teach not just every single subject, but every single subject in 2 languages.
Dios mío.
My poor son. I ask for his forgiveness like daily. Like every time I tell this story, I'm like, honey, I'm so sorry again that mommy did that to you. Do you forgive me? You really forgive me, right? Because he was like my guinea pig, right? It was like my first
Uh-huh.
homeschool child. And so, my goodness, the things I put him through. But I quickly, when I think it was around year 3 or year 4 of homeschooling that I realized, okay, this is too much. This is not sustainable. I'm about to have another child. Like, this is not going to work. And so that's when I started learning a lot more about like true homeschooling. And what I mean by that is, I mean doing home first, and I mean doing our living together and understanding that our kids are learning all the time, whether we're teaching them how to do chores or out in the garden or taking a walk or reading a book. All of those things are learning. And so I had to redefine education and learning for myself first because I wasn't homeschooled. My husband wasn't homeschooled, right? He went to public school through and through. And so we had to redefine that. So that was a big deal first, first big shift that had to happen. And then I had to pick and choose. I had to realize that there was going to be different seasons in my life. So there were times where I did do a, traditional Spanish, like think of like your English language arts curriculum, but in Spanish. So there was a couple years that we did do that. And then there was years that we didn't. There's no way that I could have done Spanish language arts every single year. So knowing that there are seasons and different rhythms, and that's okay, you can adjust. As long as you're doing something daily, it could be a little bit, it could be reading, just reading aloud in Spanish. I think that became our outlet. So I'm about to go back into a cycle of my oldest wants to go back to some sort of grammar, some sort of like Spanish language arts that will help him to know, why are there accents there? Why don't I know where the accents go? Why is this verb tense this way and not that way? So now he's asking those questions as he's reading to his sister. Because in the season that I'm in right now, we're not learning everything in 2 languages. That was thrown out the window, right? In the season that we're in right now, and really the last couple of years, we have loved learning through literature, everything. We are a big unit study family and a big read aloud family. And so everything that we're doing, I just try to find what is one thing, one aspect of this unit that we can study in Spanish, or what is one read aloud that I can add to this unit or topic that we're learning about that is in Spanish. Right now, for example, we're learning about Antarctica and all of that. And so I'm reading aloud a few different books in English, and I'm like, there's no way I can add another, 30 minutes of reading aloud that I have to do in Spanish. So I recruited my son, who is an awesome Spanish read aloud and English read aloud reader, like reader out louder. I guess is that a
I don't know if there's a technical term for that.
term for that? And so now once a week, he's reading aloud to his sister, The Horse and His Boy, in Spanish. And so they're just doing one chapter once a week. And so that's what bilingual homeschooling looks like right now. And that's okay. Right. And there's so much happening with that one chapter once a week. And then we're talking in Spanish on and off. When daddy's home, obviously we speak in English. And I try to find other resources for them. If there's like a TV show or something, if they're going to do screen time, let's have at least half of that screen time be something in Spanish. Like Right Now Media, they have shows in Spanish on there. So just making it a part of your everyday life. It doesn't have to be this structured, rigid, or it doesn't even have to be a specific curriculum necessarily. It's just making it a part of everyday life and showing the kids the value that there is in knowing two languages and speaking two languages. I think that there are different types of families and different types of goals. And we were talking a little bit about this before, Ginger, where like you have bilingual homes, like my home, where dad speaks English, mom speaks Spanish, or, both languages. And we're in agreement. We want the kids to be bilingual. And so that's a completely different experience than mom and dad both speak mostly Spanish. They're in a state where they have to teach in English because that's what the law requires, like in Pennsylvania, for example. And they want their children to learn English, how to read, write, speak it, and all of that, so that they can assimilate to the culture that they are in, which is great. But then at times, at the expense of that, then children forget their English, or I'm sorry, their Spanish, right? So there's just a lot of different scenarios out there for what bilingual homeschooling could look like. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it was really good. It makes me think of, I had shared earlier too, like a really good friend of mine, they adopted 3 children from Colombia last year. And that was they had to learn Spanish before they were allowed to adopt these children. And they lived down there for 5 weeks with the kids before they could come home. And then the children knew nothing. They knew no English at all. And then so they brought them home, and they had to teach them English. And she's a homeschooler, but she wants them to retain their culture. She doesn't want them to lose all of that. And she also wants her biological children to gain the skills of speaking in another language too, which a lot of them have picked up a lot. It's been quite amazing to see. And the one little boy that came from Colombia, he is amazing. Like, I can't believe how fast he's so sharp, and he picked up English so fast. We do Bible quizzing with them. He Bible quizzed in English.
That's awesome.
It was incredible. Like, I couldn't believe it. It's so cute. I love his accent. But so like, it's just wonderful. Like, just bringing the culture into it, retaining it. It is a valuable, wonderful, beautiful thing. And you don't want to lose it, and you shouldn't lose it. So it's like trying to figure out how you can, do the requirement of the law, which does say you need to speak in English, but there's freedom in that. Yes. Like you were saying about the freedom earlier, and that is such a basic homeschooling message that we have to keep telling people again and again and again. Like, be freedom minded. This is not public school at home. This is not regimented anything. This is not, you make it what it needs to be for your family, your values, your goals, abilities, whatever, skill levels, and you design it to be what you want it to be for your family. So do you, when when they read, like say when they're reading A Horse and His Boy, is your copy in Spanish or is it in English and they're reading it in Spanish?
No, it's in Spanish. It's right here.
That is wonderful. So like my friend, I'll have to connect with you about that, or maybe we can put it in the notes about where to find them, because my friend was trying to find readers for her kids in Spanish and she was having a hard time finding that. I don't know, I can tell by your reaction. It's like this whole thing. But
Yeah.
so, you know, and then my question is too, even if you have, say you read something in English,
Mm-hmm.
is it feasible to discuss it in Spanish? Like,
Yes.
so you can do it that way, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, a couple of things, because I think there's a little bit of fear around this, especially for children. And this fear can come from our Spanish speaking or English speaking parents, alike. And the fear is, will my child be confused if they're learning to read or to write in two languages at once? Will my child be confused? The answer is no. The answer is no, a big, big no. So
That's wonderful.
if there is one thing that I actually do remember from my college education, I took a course called Latino Studies 315. And I remember looking at study after study after study that showed that children that learned and were exposed to more than one language before age 8 were picking it up and learning it organically, naturally. Like your brain is amazing. The human brain is just fantastic. I mean, it's of course a testament to the creator. But from ages 0 to 8 is your window of just allowing your children to learn and be exposed to as many languages as possible. While we were in India, I'm never going to forget this. When we were in India, I met a child that spoke 6 languages. 6 languages. And at first I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. It's incredible. How do you do this? And then I realized most kids in India spoke at least 4. Most kids. And it's because they have the language they had to learn in school. So if it was Hindi, for example, English, then they have another state language. So like that could be Malayalam or Tamil. And then they had their social language. So where I would have been like Rajasthani, for example. And so these children could communicate in all of these languages simply because they were immersed in it from the beginning. No one had to actually like sit there and separate it all for them. So for my son, I think he was close to like 15, 16 months of age. I was a little nervous because he wasn't speaking a whole lot. And so I remember just asking the pediatrician, because, first time mom, you ask the pediatrician everything. I just remember asking, so he's not saying a whole lot, like what's going on? Should we be concerned? Should we be worried? And she said, well, tell me about your home life. And so I explained, I speak to him in Spanish, I read to him in Spanish, and daddy comes home and we speak in English and we read in English and we do things in English. And she's like, okay, well, nothing's wrong with your son. He's just literally learning everything in 2 languages right now. So his brain is just like understanding and learning that this has 2 words. This is book, but this is also libro, right? So it was just taking a little bit longer, but he was not confused at all. It was probably like another 2 months after that, and he just took off speaking in both languages, right? So that's just to speak to that fear. Like, please don't be fearful. That fear is a lie, right? Your child and their capacity to learn is so wonderful. It's beyond something that we can like comprehend. How in the world can a 6-year-old learn 4 languages at the same time? Ask God, right? Like
Yeah.
But for us, we chose to teach our kids how to read in Spanish first. Not because that was like backed up by research or anything, but honestly, because that's what I was confident in. I learned how to read in English as a 7th grader. So that experience was completely different. I don't remember sitting down and doing phonics, right? For me, it was very different. So I just said, well, Lord, I'm going to do what I know how to do. And so I called my dad. And I said, Dad, can you send me la cartilla fonética? It's like our first reader, in Spanish. Can you send that to me? Because I can't find it here. He sent that to me. And so I just sat with him. I remember with my son and just teaching him like, me con haces ma me mi mo mu. Like, and we just started. And a lot of people ask me, then how did you teach them how to read in English? And I just say, I didn't. I didn't teach them how to read in English. The language that they are immersed in and surrounded by is English. So I didn't have any doubt doing, of course, foundational things, instilling a love of reading, making sure your home is educational, like, and that you love to learn together. All of those things, of course, matter. But I just knew that they were going to be surrounded by English and they were going to learn it on their own. And one day my son just started reading in English and I said, did you just read that? How did you read that? And he's like, I don't know. I think this is what it says. And so
Amazing.
he just figured it out. With my daughter, I was like, I probably should teach her how to read in English. Like, this is me. This is what homeschool moms do. We don't trust ourselves enough, right? We don't trust enough at times. And I started to teach her in English after she had learned how to read in Spanish. And it was so hard. It was so difficult. It was frustrating. She was not liking it at all. And it was coming in between our relationship. So I was like, we're done. I'm not going to teach her how to read in English anymore. I just put it aside. It was probably about 2 or 3 months after that, she picked up the little book, The Littles.
Yeah.
Because my son had it laying around and he was like, oh, that was one of the very first chapter books I read in English. And she was like, I want to read it. And she picked it up and she started reading it. Like, I just backed off. I just let them be. I let her learn at her own pace and with her own experiences. So I think the most important thing when you're trying to do bilingual homeschooling is don't be so focused on all the resources and all of that. I mean, that can be hard. I think when I started homeschooling, that was my number one focus. Like, where do I find the curriculum, Spanish curriculum? Where do I find the books? And so it does take more work. But when I realized how we were going to be doing education and our method, right, our eclectic methods and all of that, then I realized that, I have a great book list right here. I'm going to see if any of these books are already translated into Spanish. And guess what? They were, like Charlotte's Web.
Oh, wonderful.
Right? Like, this is one of the very first books. My family knew the story in Spanish before we watched the movie in English. And then we read the book in English, right? Or Paddington, Un oso llamado Paddington. And there's 2 of those actually. And then for my son who's older, he loves My Side of the Mountain.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Oh,
look at that. That's so wonderful.
So some of these books that, are you hear about them because you're in the homeschool world and you share the book list and you read about these are the classics or living books or this or that. Just, it's going to take some research. I've been praying about trying to gather all these things together in one place to share with other bilingual homeschool families as well, so that not everyone has to do everything that I did. But just, doing a little bit of extra legwork and then just choosing that we're going to read this for our read aloud is going to be in Spanish for a season. And then we'll go back to an English book. So yeah, I know that was a lot, but hopefully
No, but that's really important, because I think what you did is just freed everyone from the thought that they have to find this whole, like you said, we're going to do a whole curriculum in English and a whole curriculum in Spanish. And let me tell you, we all mess up on the first one. That's not just you. We mess up on the first one. I mess, that's just how it is. And God knows, right? God knows he doesn't expect us to have it all figured out. But yeah, just that, again, it goes back to that freedom, and just reading is so good. They can learn so much just listening to good literature. They can learn good grammar in both languages, good sentence structure, vocabulary, all these things. I encourage people to read a little above their learning, where they're at or whatever, their learning level. So so they're introduced to these new concepts and words and stuff like that, and just good books. Oh, it's so good. So I definitely want to see if you have somewhere I can put in my notes at the if you look in the description of this episode, hopefully there'll be a link in there with a place that we can look for Spanish readers. I know my friend will be very, very interested in that. So I love the thought too that learning a language is natural. It's natural. I took a missionary trip to Ghana to do a 2-week camp out there, and we had sponsored a child through school, and he was there as a camp counselor, and I met him and stuff. And one of the first questions he asked me was, "How many languages do you speak?" And he was appalled when I said one. Like, really? I mean, I could like, my daughter just did a Spanish class this year, so I could do a little bit. It's amazing how it comes back, and my friends' Spanish children, I would be around them, and I would, Spanish speaking children, and I would try to talk, it does come back, but it's rusty. But he just couldn't believe it, because they speak English and French, and then Tree was their language, and then there's about 3 or 4 other tribal languages that are there that they know all these different variations and stuff like that, but they're living in it all the time and they're exposed to it. It's a part of their world, so it's not like we can't learn it. We're just here, just really not exposed to it in our normal learning. So if you just do the thing of, like, I had some kids that they were interested in Dutch, so my little kid, my little son, one day was writing words in Dutch at church, and he makes these silly little sentences in Dutch and, Russian and whatever, listen to worship music in Russian and, whatever. They just, because there's so much that's available out there. So, this isn't necessarily just Spanish speaking. This is anyone. Like, you want your child to learn anything, just provide maybe a favorite movie you translated in a different language and you just watch it or look for books that are translated. So,
and that's exactly why we chose this book for them to read, because my daughter, both of them love the Narnia series. So my daughter especially loves this one. Like, this is her favorite. And so it was like a no-brainer. It's like, okay, well, she loves that story. It's already translated. It's translated with Latin American Spanish.
okay.
So Castellano from Spain. So that's another thing that you have to be on the lookout for as you're researching and as you're listening to audiobooks or looking for audiobooks. If anybody's a Yodo user, we have a Yodo. We got it for our daughter, and they have several of their cards in Spanish. So like, she listened to Matilda, for example, but she listened to it in Spanish. And so but you have to listen to it. Like, does it have the lisp, like, the Spanish lisp, or is it recorded by a Latin American voice? So that's another thing you need to decide in your family. And so for us, we've exposed them to both, but both of my kids have a very strong opinion that they like the Latin American voices a lot more.
That's interesting. My classes in high school were Castilian.
Okay. Yes. So that's and that's just, it's preference, but they also, again, going back to making it valuable to them in their context, the people that they are going to be speaking in Spanish to, whether it is our trash guys or whether it is someone at church or whether it's someone like my kids get to spend a day every week with their grandma, my husband's mom, and she lives in a 55 and older development. And so whenever the yard work is getting done, a lot of the crew they're always Spanish speaking. And so Bella is what we call her. She's not grandma, she's Bella. Bella, hey, go out there and say hello to them and see if they need anything see if they need any water, or, ask them this question. And so they are in this context of speaking to people that are more from Latin America than from Spain.
Yes.
And so they see the value of understanding those dialects and those accents more, because that is their reality. That is what they're involved in, right? And into. And then obviously with my family, they're speaking with Puerto Ricans. So that's a whole other language. I don't know what that is.
So funny. Well, all the dialects, I mean, you got the accents in America. There's a lot of them, and some of them you just can't understand. So, it's real. So I'm going to ask you one little lighthearted question before we wrap up. But
Sure.
so do you think in Spanish or do you think in English?
So let me tell you, our brains are just fascinating. So I'm at the point right now that I do think more in English. However, after being around like my mom, like if I go visit my mom in, say, college, after being with her for a couple of hours, my brain is thinking in Spanish. So that it's just crazy how our brains can do that. I remember when we were in India and our first 6 months we had to go to language and culture school, which is awesome. And so we were learning Hindi, and our teacher said, the first time you dream in Hindi, that's when you'll know the language is in you. Like, that is so true. Like, when you start to think in the language without trying to think in the language, right? That's when you know, okay, it's become a part of me. And just going back to your being exposed to lots of languages, and that I remember someone shared this joke with me once. I said, someone that speaks 3 or more languages is called multilingual. Someone that speaks 2 languages is called bilingual. Someone that speaks only 1 language is called an American.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly right.
That's not to offend anyone or anything, but I just thought it was so funny. I'm like, it's so true. It's so true. And I think there's different reasons for that. But I think that when you start to realize, okay, words matter because they have meaning and they connect people, and words in other languages do the same thing and they connect you to other cultures. And these are real lives, like these are real experiences that people have. When you start to think about it that way, then it becomes a more holistic learning experience than just, I'm going to try to figure out how to, match all these words in my workbook, do this matching and use like process of elimination to try to figure out what goes with what, right? Because they can figure it out. Language learning is a lot like math, right? When you figure out, you can learn how to add, subtract, multiply, divide. But when you go to do a word problem, you need to understand how to use that knowledge, right? And it's the same thing with language learning. You can do the Duolingo, you can do the workbook practice, right? You can do all of those things, but it's not until you're in a situation where you're having to like extract all of that knowledge and actually apply it and kind of, forcing yourself to speak it, that you'll feel like you're confident enough to say, I am bilingual. I'm getting there, right? I am learning this language. So looking for those opportunities in your own community, even if you can't, have your child study abroad or anything like that, is very important, and is going to help them see the value of having more than 1 language under your belt, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not offended by that comment about Americans because it's the truth. It's the truth. We're like the only ones. Like my cousin lives in London, and on the weekend they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go over to France." I'm like, "What?
Yeah, yeah.
Who does that?" Europeans do that, right? So they're so close to each other. They kind of have to know at least a little bit here and there of everything. And like you said, it's not maybe not easy to do, but it's definitely doable
Mm-hmm.
if you make it a priority, right? If you give opportunity for those types of things. So good. This discussion has been so good. So is there any one last thing you would like to share with everybody about if they're interested in bilingual homeschooling, or if they're in it, any little nugget that we didn't touch yet that you might want to make sure people are aware of?
Sure. I think the most important thing, because it's not easy, right? Homeschooling is not easy. And homeschooling in 2 languages or more is not easy. But I think if you make it intentional and natural, so you have to be intentional. You have to do a little bit of the legwork. You have to know your kids, right? What is it that's going to get them excited, that they're going to enjoy the process? Because it shouldn't be another thing we have to do, right? So be intentional, and then make it natural so that it's something that already flows into the rhythm of your day. If it's not natural, if it's forced, then it's not going to happen. It's going to be one of those things that just like, we've all done it. We've bought this book or we've bought that activity kit or whatever, but because we don't ever get to it, or because it's a little bit harder to get to it, it just kind of falls off the wayside. And so then it's like, oh, I'm going to give this to somebody else, that can use it. So I would say just be intentional and make it natural, something that naturally fits into your day.
That is wonderful. You know what? It doesn't have to be this whole thing. We always make everything this whole thing, right? It doesn't have to be this whole thing. Just, yeah, natural. I love that. Freedom and natural. Very good words of wisdom. So Spanish speaking friends out there, we are hopefully, I will be on with our session. We have Nellie. Oh my goodness, I can't remember her last name. It starts with a V.
It does.
It does. Oh, I'm so sorry, Nellie. But she is going to be presenting some things about the law and about what God says about education at our convention. And I'm hoping to have her on the show also to talk about what she's going to talk about, so that you can be prepared. And hopefully you can share this episode and that episode far and wide for all those who need support in not even just in Spanish, but just information about learning in multiple languages, like learning and not, don't be just the American, just knows English. But
Her
yeah.
last name is Vizcarrondo, by the way. Nelly
Yes, there we go.
Vizcarrondo.
Yes, I knew it was beautiful with the rolled R's in it. So yeah, so look for that episode. It'll be coming up before too long, definitely before convention. But Ireida, thank you so much for coming on. I love talking to you. You are so fun to talk to, and it's just a joy to have conversations with you, and just, I don't know, just talking about how this doesn't have to be a nightmare.
Right.
Let's just step back and make this a little easier than what we think it needs to be. And that's a standard message for all homeschooling moms out there. Let's just step back and make it natural and work with the freedom. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to see you at the convention, which is not very far away at this point.
No.
And yeah, and then we'll have a meetup also at the convention. So we'll have 2 sessions in Spanish about the law and about education, but then we're also having a meetup where anyone who wants to do bilingual homeschooling, specifically Spanish, in some way can meet up. You can get resources, have conversations, make connections, you can build each other up, that sort of thing. So please, conv.chaponline.com. That's conv.chaponline.com. That'll take you to the website. They'll tell you all about the convention. And then we would love to see y'all there and get the support you need. Like Ireida said, she walked in and was like, but that welcoming face. And we're looking to have Spanish speaking mentors at the CHAP booth. So if you are Spanish speaking and want to talk to someone one-on-one and get support, we're looking to get that set up so that you can have that encouragement that you need. So, okay. Thank you again, Ireida. Everyone out there, just love the freedom and natural learning that happens as we teach our children to follow Christ in all of life. As we learn to follow Christ in all of life, let him direct our paths and what it is that we're doing. And do it with joy. Do it with joy. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye now.
Ciao.